Well, a federal judge has blocked the president's 6-month moratorium on deepwater drilling in the Gulf, a move that could put thousands of oil workers back on the job. But is it really safe to start drilling again? I spoke to the president of the American Petroleum Institute before this decision earlier today. Here's that conversation. Why should we allow the same type of drilling that caused this spill that has now been going on for 2 months? Why should that be allowed to happen again? I understand the job losses. I think everyone's sympathy is with those employees. But we cannot see another disaster like this, and we don't have a solution for the current disaster.
Let me put this in context a little bit if I can. The oil and natural gas industry has been operating in the Gulf of Mexico for over 65 years. We have drilled over 42,000 wells and produced billions of barrels of oil and trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Unfortunately, this is the first time an incident of this nature has ever happened.
And there is oil being pumped in the Gulf right now. The moratorium is not on the production of oil. It's on the exploration, the drilling of these 33 rigs. You've got 70 deepwater rigs, so more than half are producing oil right now. At what cost? Isn't it akin to saying an airline that has one of its planes that goes down? They don't know what the cause was, and they don't yet have the fix, but they're still going to fly the planes?
We believe we should have additional safety inspections. The administration rightfully moved quickly to look at these other operations that were ongoing, to inspect them, to make sure they're safe. We feel all that is appropriate. We're working with the administration to make sure we address any concerns or any potential concerns. But we've got to balance that with the need the country has for the energy so we don't compound the problem and hurt the economy generally.
Can the API quantify the cost of the moratorium in terms of jobs and also in terms of revenue, both tax revenue at the state and the federal level? Can you talk about the cost of it? Because obviously the industry is fighting back against it for those reasons. Any way to quantify it here?
Well, there's a number of statistics or numbers that we could talk about. Let me tell you from third-party independent sources. They suggest that we have put at risk in the short term over the next 6 months as many as 46,000 jobs, that we have put at risk $120 to $150 million of royalty revenue to the federal government. We have also put at risk $300 to $500 million in tax revenue to the federal government. Others have suggested through their analysis that there's $5 to $10 million a month attached to these rigs in wages that's being lost as a result of the moratorium. So it is very significant to the local economies.
Jack, what about oil supply? You know, it's interesting. You watch crude prices. Futures haven't really fluctuated that much since the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded. How and when do you think U.S. consumers are going to feel the impact of the moratorium, and how much oil are we talking about here prevented from possibly being pumped out of the Gulf?
Well, the Gulf of Mexico today produces about 1.7 million barrels of oil per day. That's about 30% of our domestic production. Of that 30%, about 80% of that comes from the deep water. The 20 highest yielding, highest producing oil wells in the Gulf of Mexico come from the deep water.
So what are we talking about in terms of barrels per day here, if we could?
Well, barrels per day is about 1.7 million coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the longer-term impacts to consumers, it's a function of supply and demand. The price is set on a worldwide market, but obviously any time you reduce the supply going into a market, you run the risk that you're going to impact prices. We're clearly hopeful we don't get to that point.
The amount of oil coming out of the Gulf now, has that changed since the Deepwater Horizon incident? I mean, because oil production is still going on in the Gulf, so the 1.7 million barrels a day that you just cited, that hasn't changed, has it?
Well, independent economists suggest that it could change as much as 80,000 to 130,000 barrels a day. That's a pretty significant adjustment in light of the amount that's being produced. That doesn't happen overnight, as you know, Poppy, but it will happen in the relative near future, and that's why we have to be mindful. There are long lead times to the production of this energy. You don't turn it on and off overnight, and that's why we're so concerned that we need to be focused on that next development wave to make sure when the public demands the energy, we've got it available for them.
Jack Gerard, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Poppy.